You know, after going through Cardcaptor Sakura and its absurd levels of scaling, a thought ended up in my head as most power scalers usually have when they finish a piece of work. How would X character stand up against Y character? Now usually these are people who finish shonen series where there is a bit of debate between top running series, and because they're males, fighting is usually the go-to since these are generally battle shonen. You know, series focused on fighting with unique power systems and generally the same range of scaling all around. This allows for people to go and ask some cool questions like Madara vs Obito or who would win between Yami and Gojo, and have some decent discussions about the answers to these questions. However, for shoujo series, especially Mahou shoujo series, this is vastly different. Since these series are all about a unifying theme that generally ends in friendship and don't really care about the fighting itself, we usually don't have that much to go off of coming to fighting when fighting isn't the main focus of the series. After all, only crazy people can ask if Sailor Moon can beat Goku in a fight. That being said, with me having a male brain with 2 active neurons running in it at all times, the hypothetical I wanted to go over today was between the 2 frontrunners of the Mahou shoujo aesthetic back in the 90s and early 2000s, this being between Sailor Moon and Cardcaptor Sakura. While one is more of a well-known name than the other, it isn't a stretch to say that these 2 series alongside Tokyo Mew Mew were some of the most influential Mahou shoujo series in its early days. So we will pit them in a fight to the death against each other just so I can prove that Mahou shoujo series are scalable for my own sanity. So with this we will be going over their manga iterations as well as the Crystal and Reservoir Chronicle scaling on top of all that, and let's just jump into it. I'm really tired of waiting. In terms of strength, a lot of people automatically assume that Sailor Moon is stronger than Sakura since Sailor Moon's final chapter basically had her as God with Lambda. After all, Sakura only scales above Clove Reed, who is considered the strongest magician in the entire world by various other characters, while Sailor Moon scales to and above Sailor Cosmos, who had full control over Lambda and lost to Chaos. This wouldn't sound like it puts too much into Sakura's favor. After all, the only thing we've seen Clove do in Cardcaptor is put a planet to sleep, and I'm sure that more than one character in the Sailor Moon verse has done that. Meanwhile, Galaxia says that Chaos was just toying with her, with Galaxia being a Senshi who is so strong that her power traversed throughout the space-time corridor, a place of infinite size that a stronger Pluto from the future thought was too powerful for the Queen herself to walk through safely. However, for more clarification regarding these characters, let's just break each of these down. Lambda, as we went over briefly in the Sailor Moon video, is a force that was stated by Sailor Cosmos to be able to reset everything to the static cosmos, being a complete rewipe of a universe and resetting it, being strong enough to even shrink Chaos, the embodiment of all of Sailor Moon's enemies, into an infinitesimally small speck in the Galaxy Cauldron, who was someone who threatened Sailor Cosmos to the point of needing to go back in time to get a past Sailor Moon's help. This includes not only the infinite space of the space-time corridor that allows people to go into different points in time, but also Elysium, which is on an alternate plane that Nehelenia was able to turn to dust and ruin, who also had control over several other mirror universes. And this power of Lambda is used by Sailor Cosmos, who is stated to be the ultimate future version of Sailor Moon, and yet with this power that she's implied to have mastered, she was unable to fight Chaos and needed to run away, stating that after the defeat of Chaos, present Sailor Moon is considered to be the strongest version of Sailor Moon. This Chaos was already way above Galaxia, who believed that she was a fool to think she could beat him, someone who scaled so drastically above Nehelenia that Sailor Moon and the other Senshi with eternal forms all got folded by Galaxia and her anima mates. This should all sound fairly familiar. After all, this would be my 3rd time or so going over this, but it's just to iterate how much stronger Lambda makes Sailor Moon, as even it releasing hurts Chaos, as Chaos states that Lambda was ripping her apart, and this wasn't Sailor Moon even attacking, she had just gotten the power up. Though a lot of times in shoujo series like this, you can't tell how the is going on here. So how could Sakura possibly scale up to this? Well, while Sailor Moon has Lambda, due to Tsubasa and Clear Car scaling, Sakura just becomes nuts. But how does someone who basically scales to a planetary threat possibly have a chance of being stronger than someone who can reset universes? Due to Reservoir scaling, Sakura becomes more insane, the reason being because of Fei Wong. Fei Wong, the main antagonist of Reservoir Chronicles, before he even says that he surpasses Clove's level with Clove magic, is able to destroy the entire Reservoir multiverse and its various time spaces after bringing Tsubasa's final feather to her and unlocking the rest of her power. Not only does this destroy the multiverse, but this is even threatened to destroy the very laws of the universe itself, such as the law of the dead not being able to be revived, as well as other conceptual laws of the universe. Now why are we bringing Tsubasa scaling into this? Well, the reason is because the Clo Reed from Cardcaptor Sakura is actually the same one from Reservoir Chronicles, as Reservoir Chronicles is a massive crossover between several different Clamp universes that is considered canonical to each of those said universes, with examples like Yuko mentioning Clo and Holic, and Yuko even stating that these worlds the protagonists are traveling to may have the same people, though they act differently based on their own circumstances. And the reason this matters is because Fei Wong states that he only surpasses Clo after he tries to break the law of the world that stops people from coming back to life. Not only that, but he considers Yuko, the dimensional witch, to be somewhat relative to Clo, since he notes that Clo acknowledged her, and Clo valued Yuko so much that upon her death, he just thought of Yuko waking up and not dying, and he stopped her time, which kept her from dying. You have to understand, he literally saw her dying, then off of a stray thought, stopped her internal time and kept her alive. He's literally on that Grammy type beat. This same Clo was stated to have the power to transcend dimensions and is able to hop between one dimension and another, including the countless dimensions of Reservoir Chronicles. And Clo, in the form of Ariel, without any magic reduction, tells Sakura at the very end of the first series of Cardcaptor Sakura, not even clear card, it's the first one, that she's stronger than him since he needed someone stronger than himself to split apart his overwhelming power. And this is all before clear card, where Clo and Lee state that Sakura's power would accelerate to no end should she have possession of these Sakura cards while also making new clear cards. So to simplify this, Fei Wong says that he only surpasses Clo after breaking the law of the Gulag, only for Sakura to casually surpass Clo after rewriting contracts on his cards, and she gets stronger after that as stated by Clo himself. So for someone to casually bust an entire timeline and just go, I haven't beaten him yet, that's pretty wild. Not only that, but Sakura is also able to create an entire universe with the Dreaming card, as well as being able to destroy the same universe as stated by Kaito. And on top of that, she's also able to make another universe right after that. This is only further supported by the fact that Kaito has to use Sakura's magic to perform something that apparently not even Clo could do, which is shocking because at this point he's referring to complete Clo, not just the Clo that was split in half by Sakura. As powerful as the two are strength-wise, speed feats are where they're slightly lacking, but it isn't saying that we don't have any speed feats at all, with the most notable feats including, you guessed it, voids. Both have moved or are comparable to people who move within timeless voids or throughout space-time, but when it comes to people moving within these voids, Sakura kind of has Usagi beat here. While Usagi has faced off against characters who can move to the edge of space-time and whose powers were able to ravage throughout the space-time corridor, Sakura kind of just moves through stop time. Twice. Now while this is some sort of hacks resistance, she is also comparable to Clo and Fei Wong, with Fei Wong being able to fight in a space without time after destroying the timeline, but also both Shaorin's being able to move in said timeless void as well without the need of being put into any specific space. Tsubasa scaling just makes everything so much more crazy since everything that we would have from character X or Y can just go back to this and will make it 10 times stronger. For a reference of how much more insane this is compared to Sailor Moon's speed, the concept of speed is based off of a little math equation that everyone should know post second grade, that being d over t or distance over time. The thing is that every character has to follow this formula no matter what, no matter how fast they are or how powerful. The thing about these two characters is how their inherent feats are monumentally different, however. For example, Sailor Moon being able to light up the space-time corridors or light traveling over an infinite amount of distance at once. However, Sakura, rather than traveling an infinite distance, is moving a couple of steps in a space without time at all. While Usagi still follows the concept of distance over time, Sakura's feats of moving throughout stop time completely ignores the portion of time entirely. Both would be in some level of immeasurable speed, but Sakura does seem to be faster considering that she was moving within stop time multiple times over, even scaling to people who move casually within voids without time and destroy timelines. However, when it comes to different matters of scaling, Sakura just comes out on top here, though it does depend on your interpretations of the different versions of Sakura and Reservoir scaling. If we're going over hacks, I can just take this list of hacks from Sailor Moon and this list of hacks from Sakura, and we can definitely tell the answer by this point. An example would be her Sailor Crystal, which is a source of power that stops her from dying and makes sure she is able to be reborn time and time again, so long as that crystal is not destroyed, while Sakura has no immortality to speak of. Sailor Moon also has the Silver Crystal, which is stated to have infinite power by basically everyone in the verse, allowing her to basically fight without any sort of power drain. In fact, 90% of her hacks kind of come from her silver crystal, as she can get massive amps in power through said silver crystal from willpower alone, as well as having transformations like Super and Eternal. So, if Sailor Moon has a lot of the important stuff like unlimited energy sources and the equivalent of Zenkais, how does Sakura stand up to it? Well, she does so in practically every other way. Sailor Moon has magic, but so does Sakura. I think the thing that Sakura would have that's so far above Sailor Moon would be her wand and her capture ability. Sakura's capture is able to seal any magic her wand comes into contact with into a card, and that's probably Sakura's best win condition. Now, a lot of people are probably going to go off the deep end saying things like, "She can do that on all magic." And while it is a slight stretch to go off and say all magic, it's pretty consistent that it isn't simply her own magic she can turn into cards, since she was able to revert closed magic. This also isn't based on simply magic being original cards, since she's able to do this with magic stemming from her own dreams. People will say that she doesn't use it on Kaito and his time magic, but she does need to be as strong as the magic she's trying to take, and we've basically gone over how Sakura is just as strong, if not stronger than Sailor Moon. Other hacks include Sakura having the ability to get easy BFR with the erase, something that can even erase people from existence if left on for too long. She can also multicast cards like Light and Dark, cards that alter concepts of light and darkness, with Dark being able to create an infinite pocket dimension of darkness, and Light being able to light up said infinite distance, alongside both being able to overpower closed magic after Sakura transforms them into Sakura cards. So there isn't really anything that Usagi can exploit aside from regen, but even that's something that doesn't matter if Sakura knows that the Sailor Crystal is giving her said regen. So with all of this evidence put out there, it is pretty safe to say that Sakura more than likely wins against Sailor Moon, though I would believe that it is kind of a tough time dealing with Lambda. While Sailor Moon has feats and statements that can potentially rewrite time spaces, outright creating them or destroying them just beats that. What's more, the fact that Sakura is stronger than Chloe Reed, who scales to Fei Wong, is astonishing to say the least. In order for Sailor Moon to win, you'd basically have to wank to monumental proportions, and even then, some of those arguments are You could say that Sailor Moon could potentially scale to Kronos, who is referred to by Chibiusa and Pluto, but not only is that one of the farthest reaches of all time,
Get it? See, because it's time. It's time.
but also because of the fact that Kronos has no feats or statements aside from being the father of time, as stated by a couple of characters, but even then that's still really Another thing you could say is that just like Sakura, Sailor Moon did move through Stop Time when Pluto stopped time in the Black Moon arc, but something that a lot of people wouldn't realize is that Pluto allowed the group to move within Stop Time, rather than any of the Senshi having any sort of hacks to resist temporal manipulation aside from Pluto. However, unlike Usagi, Sakura has gone ahead and moved through Stop Time simply because of the fact that she was stronger than Kaito at this point in time, as well as Kaito also stating that eventually time stop would not be enough for her. There isn't really anything that Sailor Moon has that Sakura doesn't, aside from the various infinite power statements or things that Sakura just already doesn't have access to. On top of that, Usagi hasn't really scaled to anyone that has actually destroyed a timeline or created a universe. Sure, she has fought people along the levels that could destroy the entire universe in macrocosm, but a timeline is vastly different, and Sakura is stated to be above a person who is stated to be above a man who is stronger than a clone created to destroy said timeline. Like, it seems more like the destruction of a concept rather than just destroying infinity. Now, Sailor Moon does have a level of hacks that Sakura doesn't have, but the amount that Sakura has vastly outweighs all of Sailor Moon's. I would like to say that there's more of a contest, but for some reason Clamp just had to write Reservoir Chronicles. Thanks for watching. I can't wait to see when people believe that Sailor Moon will clap Sakura. As much as I would like to say that Usagi would absolutely deck the shit out of Sakura, a lot of the argument would just come from, oh, it's Lambda though, so irrelevant. But because Sakura is a beast regardless due to slight Tsubasa scaling, it makes it funnier. That being said, this one was a lot of fun making, not only because both of these series were really big in their prime, but the end of series scalings is always just so bonkers that it makes it a somewhat interesting interaction, since when people ask about which Mahou Shoujo would win against each other, they always go after their characters rather than their actual combat stats. That being said, we've gotten through Sakura, so expect me to talk about the next thing with a whole lot more excitement, considering that, as I've alluded to over the past couple of videos, I wanted to go over this series a lot. So be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed, or if you hated the video, give me a Lambda level dislike and comment why Sakura is the most irrelevant Mahou Shoujo in all of the genre's history, and ciao.
今ここで限界を超えろ。それしか道はねえ。
じきの夜明けだ。クローバー王国最強の魔法騎士なんだ。
うん